What would you do if you knew you would succeed? In other words, if failure was impossible, what would you do? Who would you be? Where would you live? What kind of things would you have? What would your friends and your circle of influence be like? This is the question that changed my life. Hi, I'm Croy Sather. Back in the early days when I was learning self-mastery, when I was learning how to control my own mind, how to get more out of life, I kept hearing this same idea over and over and over. It was phrased differently depending on whether it was a master from years and years ago or if it was a modern master talking about it from the stage today. But the questions always came down to some version of what would you do? What would you do if you knew you would succeed? So if failure was impossible, what would you do? And I didn't have an answer at that time, but I kept asking myself that question all the time. What would I do? How would I design my life? What would it be like? How would I live? Where would I live? What are the things I want to experience? What are the things I want to accomplish? And I kept asking myself that over and over until I saw a video about a guy who ran across America. His name is Stu Middleman. So I saw a video about this guy. He ran from California to New York. He was trying to break the world record at the time. And I thought, that is the coolest thing I have ever heard. That is what I want to do. And so I set that as my goal. And luckily, as they say, naive is bliss. I had no idea that Stu Middleman was an actual runner for many, many years. I think at that point, almost 20 years. He was a professional. He had records, tons of records behind him that still to this day, some of them are still standing. But I didn't know any of that. And so I just decided that I was going to do it. But here's probably the kicker. Here's probably the most surprising part about this whole thing is that I wasn't a runner. And so with 1 year of training, I trained every day. And then a year later, I was running from California to New York, a more southerly course than what Stu took. And so I'm leaving California, New York, San Diego. And that was my third marathon I had ever run before in my entire life throughout training. I had gotten up to 20 miles and I had run 20 miles 5 days a week. That was the end of my training. That's what I built myself up to. What I didn't realize is that running 20 miles a day and running 26 miles a day is a very different game. It's significantly, exponentially harder to run that extra 6 miles a day, especially in the mountains of California. But 100 days later, 100 days without a break, I was in New York and I was finishing my 100 days across America. So a marathon a day for 100 consecutive days from California to New York. But it doesn't stop there. I kept asking myself, what would I want to do? And so I saw this guy speaking on stage and I was like, holy cow, I didn't even know this was a career. And so I decided that I was going to do that. Before that, I was a carpenter. I didn't know how to speak. I didn't know how to write. I didn't know how to do any of these things. But yet today I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm a motivational coach, and I do all of these things that back then, there were nothing more than an idea, nothing more than a question, nothing more than, holy cow, is that crazy or what? And so that's how it all starts with the question. You ask better questions, you'll get better answers. In comparison, most people ask questions like, why does this always happen to me? Why am I always getting screwed? Why don't I get a break? You keep asking those kinds of questions, you'll keep getting responses from the universe, from God saying, okay, let me give you more problems. Let me give you more struggles. Let me, all these things that are not going to be positive for you. They're going to come to you because you're asking a negative question. So you're going to get a negative answer. Instead, you turn that question around. It's like, how can I get a break? How can I get a result? How can I do this? How can I become this person? And you don't have to know how you'll do it, but you'll get there eventually. If you know where you want to go, the how will figure its way out throughout the process. And so let me give you an example. I was in McDonald's with my kids. They were little at that time. I don't know. They were 5 and 6 at the time or something like that. And we're sitting at McDonald's. We're waiting for our pancakes. And there's this guy on the other side of this divider. And there was only fake plants between us. So it was as if he was right there, but we couldn't see him, but we could hear him as if he was sitting right next to us. And so he's going on and on with his friends. He's in worker clothes, construction clothes like I used to be. And so I recognized the style of voice. I recognized the volume and the forcefulness. And so I knew it was a bunch of construction guys working over there. And so this one guy's like, I'm always getting screwed. Why does this always happen to me? And then he goes into this long story about how he's some sort of financial problem that he was having. And he's going on and on and on. And he's cursing and screaming and yelling. And so, I'm a little bit upset because he's cursing and yelling in front of my young kids. But I was more interested in the mindset aspect of this guy's language. And because I couldn't see him and I was only listening at first, it took on it hit me different. And so I'm like, holy cow, that's the power of language. Now, I had been studying this. I had known this at the time, but it was the first time that it hit me like that. This guy is screaming and yelling emphatically with power. Why does this always happen to me? Why am I always getting screwed? I'm always losing money. And he's saying all these things, but he's saying it with force, with power, with emotion. And that's what's bringing that into his life. Well, what if you gave that same power, that same force, that same emotion, but it was for something you wanted? How am I going to become a millionaire? What do I need to do to become a millionaire? What do I have to do to lose 50 pounds? Who do I have to become to be healthy and fit? And you asked it with the same power, the same force, the same emotion. Now that's going to set into your subconscious mind, your other than conscious mind, and it's going to start to reprogram it. And if you keep asking yourself that question enough times, you're going to get an answer that's going to solve the problem. But here's an even better distinction. Ask that question in an even better way. How can I become the person? How can I lose 50 pounds and make it fun and enjoyable and easy? Now that's a powerful question. How can I become a millionaire but work less and have a better time doing it? How can I have an impact along the way? Those are powerful questions. And if you ask them with power and you ask them with emotion, then that's going to get a very different response than, why am I always living paycheck to paycheck? Why can't I get a break? Those are weak statements. Those are weak questions. Those are disempowering energies. And so you're going to get disempowering answers. But that's the question that can change your life. What would I do if I knew I would succeed? So failure was impossible. What would you do? Go ahead, write that down now. Don't just listen to me. Or if you're driving, then at least think about it in your head right now. What would you do? Give some ideas. So if I go back through my old bucket list, a bucket list is things you want to do before you end up passing away, before you kick the bucket. And if I look back at my early bucket list when I first started doing this almost 20 years ago now, I look at things and almost everything is crossed off. And the things that aren't crossed off usually became irrelevant for one reason or another. There was something I was just writing and I thought I wanted at the time, but then later on I realized that's not so important. Cool, no problem with that. But there are so many things that I knocked off. Marathons, Ironman races, the kind of cars I had, the kind of houses I had, where I wanted to live. And so all of these things, they came true. Now, there's still a few things on there that I haven't achieved yet, and I'm working on them now. But so many things I had accomplished that I never would have accomplished had I not created this list and asked myself these kinds of questions. So now that you've been thinking about it, what would you do if you knew you would succeed? So if you could have anything, do anything, be anything, live anywhere, what would they be? Comment in the, rate it below in the comments below, some of these answers that you have. And it doesn't matter if you don't know how you're going to get there. Just start. This is how you start, by first coming up with the clarity of these are the things I want, then ask yourself the empowering questions, and then go figure out how to get there. Hey, if you haven't yet joined Unstoppable Morning, go ahead, click the link below. It's where I show you over 5 days how you can change your life in 5 days by changing the way you start your morning. Unstoppablemorning.com, or click the link below.